Let's do some drywall.
Hello everybody, today we're going to be patching a hole. They had to cut this open here to do a valve. Looks like the shower's on the other side, so the plumber had to cut a big access hole to change out the valve. Well, we got called in to patch it in. Good thing is the plumber saved the pieces, so we're going to go ahead and reuse the pieces. If they're in good shape, you can always reuse them. If they're broken or got water damage, then you're going to have to replace them. First things first, we're going to put some plastic down, get everything masked off. Going to add some wood here, wood backing here, wood backing there. Got a stud here. Everything looks ready to go. So let's go ahead and get this area masked off. Pull your nails, pull old screws out, claw hammer. Wood backing, you can use anything, 2x4s, 1x2s, wood sheeting, whatever you have. Wire here, I like to push it back in the wall. This is my go-to backings, just these 1x2s, they're cheap, easy to use. Inch-and-a-quarter drywall screws, inch-and-a-half screws work too. Basically on center. Couple screws in it. Also a screw on your outside bolt sheetrock and the stud. That marks your stud and it tightens it up. Two pieces here, so I want to see how this first piece sits. See if it's right on the center of the stud, so that's perfect. Kick it over nice and tight. Toenail the screw if have to. That way it's in there. Alright. little gap here, but I'm just going to tape the gap. Plenty of screws. Remember that one? Optional fiberglass mesh tape, always use on repairs. Hung. Now you're ready for first coat. Alright, first coat mud needs to be fairly thick. I pushed all the mud in the gap. Get it pushed in the fiberglass mesh inside the gap. Good pre-fill technique. Now you can coat it. Rock in your mud, get that out. Let that set up. Hot mud, not going to use it. Dump it right away to clean your pan out. Clean your tools as your mud's setting up. This is a 5-minute quick set, so it's going to take at least 4 to 6 minutes. And I'm going to come in here and see as it's setting up. Once it starts to set up, I'm going to slick it out with a wet sponge and a 6-inch knife. Give it about 5 minutes or so to set up. This is a hot mud technique. If you're new to drywall, just use a joint compound. Joint compounds have to dry overnight. This is a 5-minute hot mud. So with hot muds, they have a 5-minute, 20-minute, 40-minute, 90-minute mud. So it's a small patch like this. I have to finish in one trip, so I'm using a hot mud. Hot mud's more professional grade material. Let it set up in a couple minutes. Still wet. Sometimes it takes a little longer to set up if you're doing patches on a semi-gloss textured wall. The semi-gloss just takes a little longer. So just be patient. It's starting to go, but we'll give it a couple more minutes. Patience, patience, patience. This is a hot mud technique only. If a joint compound, you would just let it dry overnight, 24 hours, then you would just sand it after it dries, then do a second coat, then let that coat dry, and then sand it, then you'll be ready for texture. With hot muds, we have to let it set up, then slick it out with a 6-inch knife and a wet sponge. So let's let it set up another couple minutes. Alright, it's setting up now. Like I said, sponge, clean 6-inch knife. This is a feathering technique, only done with hot muds. You don't wait till it fully dries. You have to catch it as it's setting up. Slick out technique, slicking out. I'm just running the damp sponge over it, and I'm going to follow it with the 6. Basically, you're taking off the extra mud, pushing down hard. Taking off the extra mud, pushing down hard. If you do this slick out technique correctly, and there's enough materials on it, it's almost like doing a second coat. In this patch, I think I'm going to slick it out good enough where it's going to be ready for texture after I slick it out. Extra mud, take it off your knife. Edge, the edge is most important. Get rid of that edge, feather that edge out. It looks good to me. Since I coated the patch heavy enough and I slicked it out just right, perfect patch, perfectly smooth. If it was still deep and not perfect, you'd have to follow it through with another coat, tight coat. But I'm just going to get rid of these edges, and I'm going to let this hot mud set up thoroughly, give it another few minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to get my hopper ready with a joint compound. I'm going to do the spray in a joint compound. I do not use hot muds for textures ever. Some people want me to use a hot mud to get it to dry so they can turn around and paint it. If you want the best finish, just use a joint compound and let it dry overnight so you get a better finish with a joint compound. These hot muds are good for coating, but they're kind of rough and heavy. The joint compound's smoother and gives you better finish. But that's just a light splatter, basically a splatter. You let the splatter set overnight, and then you lightly sand it to give you the light knockdown. If I try to knock down this splatter, the knockdown is going to be too heavy. So this is just a splatter that's been sanded the next day to give it the knockdown appearance. It's a real small dot, and that's how they get the small knockdown look. Heavier knockdowns would knock them down after the texture's sprayed, but with this, we're just going to have to sand it the next day or tell the painter or the homeowner to let this texture dry overnight, and they turn around and sand it. Let's let this set up, and let's go get our hopper full of mud. I don't need much mud, just probably a quarter of a hopper of joint compound, and then we're just going to spray the whole area nice and even. Whatever pattern you go, horizontal, diagonal, vertical, whatever direction you want to go, just do a nice symmetrical spray pattern. And then we're going to spray out past the edge. That's why I had to put all this plastic here and everything, is to contain the overspray. I don't want to get spray texture on this wall, because then they'll have to sand and paint that wall. We don't want texture getting all over the place. So basically you're going to mask it off. These holes are for towel bar there, or the bracket they got to put back, so I don't want to cover them holes so they know where they are. Most important is just getting rid of this edge and coat it. Just let that sit a couple hours. Hooked up. I like to run the compressor full pressure, but I like to adjust it here. Maybe kind of spray some on the plastic to see what your pattern is. But you want to adjust it here to get your pattern, then you move to the patch. But I'm going to turn on the air compressor. We got to run it, so it's going to get kind of loud. We're going to spray it, just like I said, nice pattern. Maybe even cross it off. like I said, they're going to have to sand this. After the texture dries, it's going to have to dry at least overnight, 24 hours. And then you would just take a sanding block or 150 grit sandpaper and just lightly sand it, and it'll give you these little dot knockdown texture look. But we're just going to pull the plastic, tell the homeowner to let it dry overnight, then just let them know they need to sand it lightly, then primer, then paint. But that's pretty much it. Easy patch done with hot mud, done less 30 minutes. If you know what you're doing. If the job looks complicated, then just hire someone to do it. All your plastic, most people know they want to paint the next day, they just want to leave the plastic, but it's easier to pull it now and just remask off before you paint. This texture all over this, it makes a big mess. It's easier to pull it now while it's wet. Masking, fold it up in the trash bag, good to go. Just let it dry.